How to cut a circle skirt. Measurements needed. Take out your measuring tape, paper or fabric, and pencil or chalk, and let's get started. The first thing you need to do is measure your waist. It's the most important measurement for this project. The hips are free, so no need to measure them at all. For the sake of example, let's say your waist measures 70 centimeters, and you want a skirt that has a finished hem length of 66 centimeters, perfect below the knee length. First, you need to calculate your waist radius. The formula is simple. Your waist measurement divided by 6.28. So, for a 70 centimeter waist, the radius will be 11 centimeters. Now, if you want a final hem length of 66 centimeters, you need to add 1 centimeter hem allowance enough to turn up a narrow hem of 0.5 centimeter twice. If you have a rolled hem foot, you can just add 0.5 centimeters because the foot will make a much tighter hem. So that's a total length of 67 centimeters, but I will take away the waistband measurements of 3 centimeters, which will give me 64 centimeters to cut on the fabric or pattern paper. If you buy 60-inch wide material, it will just fit. If you get 54-inch wide, you'll have to cut a shorter skirt, but as you'll see later on, the fabric is going to stretch a bit when you hang it up prior to hemming, so you'll end up with a longer amount anyway, up to 2 centimeters, depending on how tight the fabric weave is and how heavy the fabric itself if it's a stretch fabric. How to determine fabric you need. Skirt length, front plus back, plus radius plus hem allowance. Example, skirt length is 66 centimeters, radius is 11 centimeters, hem allowance is 1 centimeter. The math: 66 centimeters plus 66 centimeters plus 11 centimeters plus 1 centimeter equals 144 centimeters. 144 divided by 100 centimeters, which is 1 meter, equals 1.44, approximately 1.5 meters. Let's get cutting. To cut a perfect circle, you are going to fold your fabric twice, once to bring the selvages together and once to fold the fabric in half again the other way. Here's a diagram to help you visualize this, an example of me demonstrating on a piece of paper. The folding diagram. Once you've folded your material, basically into a square except for the leftover bit that will be used for waistband and optional pockets, it will look like this, and you'll be ready to mark your cutting lines as I'm demonstrating here. Marking your cutting lines. Now take your measuring tape and position the end at the folded corner of your fabric like this. Next, take chalk or a fabric marking pen and mark a quarter circle, using the radius you came up with in the calculation, 11 centimeters in this example. Start at one folded edge and make a mark at the 11 centimeter mark. Then pivot the tape and mark again, repeating until you reach the other folded edge, making sure the tip of the measuring tape stays on that corner, marking the waistline. Now your waist is correctly marked and it's time to mark the length. This time, position the measuring tape at the chalk line you've just drawn and mark at your desired length. Position the tape along the chalk line so you have an accurate length at each point. Think of the tape acting like the rays of the sun, or you take the radius measurements, 11 centimeters, add the skirt length, 64 centimeters, and start marking at the top of the fabric. Example, 11 centimeters plus 64 centimeters equals 75 centimeters. Mark until the edge of the fabric. Now you're ready to cut, and it's just as easy as cutting along the dotted lines. Cutting out the skirt length. Once you cut out that skirt, you cut up the center back fold to make a seam opening. Some folks advocate cutting a slit of 8 centimeters for the zipper, but I find it extremely difficult and frustrating to sew a zipper into a slit, so I strongly recommend cutting the entire center back open and then mark an 8 centimeter opening for the zipper. Making the waistband. Set aside your skirt and take your remaining material to cut a waistband. The length will be your waist measurement plus 2 centimeters seam allowance on each end, so 72 centimeters in this example. The width is up to personal preference. I like my waistband to have a finished width of 3 centimeters, so I doubled to give me 6 centimeters then, and I added 2 centimeters for the seam allowance and enough to turn under on the inside and whip stitch over the seam allowance to enclose it. That made for a final waistband width of 8 centimeters. Waistband layout on a portion of your leftover material. Now you're ready to pin the waistband to the skirt's waistline. At this point, some of you might be wondering why I didn't add an extra 2 centimeters to my skirt's waist measurement to allow for the center back seam. The answer is that because the waistline is a circle, it has a huge tendency to stretch, thanks to the bias. Even when we add 2 side seams and a center back seam to the next skirt, we do not need to pad the waistline measurement, because it will stretch to fit the waistband even after 3 seams have been stitched up. Take my word on this, because I learned through trial and error that you do not need to add to the skirt's waistline, or you'll end up having to take pleats or cut down the center back. Cut your waistline to exactly your waist measurement's radius. No fudging. Match up the center front of the skirt to the center of the waistband, right sides together, and pin. Match each edge of the skirt back to the ends of the waistband on each side and pin. Evenly pin the rest of the waistline to the waistband, being careful not to stretch as you go. Now stitch the skirt to the waistband, making sure the skirt's material doesn't fold or buckle as you go. Buying fabric. When you buy your material, you need to have enough left over to cut out a waistband across the grain of the fabric. Buying 2 yards or 2 meters will leave plenty for your skirt, waistband, and for the optional pockets. Be sure to choose fabric that has a good weight that lends itself to draping beautifully. Quilting cottons work nicely, as do linen cotton blends. Tencel can also work, but if it's very lightweight, you'll have to deal with the wind blowing your skirt straight up around your face. Don't hesitate to dive into the upholstery section, as you can often find hidden gems that work beautifully. Remember, if you choose a washable fabric like cotton or linen, be sure to pre-wash and iron your material so that it shrinks before you cut out your skirt rather than later in the laundry. How to cut a half skirt. To make a half circle skirt, you do need to start with just a teeny bit of math here also, but don't worry, it's easy. I will give you the formula that you can use all the time. You need 2 measurements, your waist measurement and a skirt length measurement to the bottom of the hem, plus 1 centimeter hem allowance. The total length you want the skirt to be, minus the waistband, because you will cut it out separately. Here is the formula to use. Waist measurement. Divide by 3.14 to get the waist radius. Example, so if your waist is 70 centimeters, divide by 3.14 to get the waist radius, which is 22 centimeters. If you get a weird decimal, just round to the nearest centimeter, then take your length measurement. Remember having subtracted the waistband, in my case minus 3 centimeters. I wanted my skirt length to be about 66 centimeters long, plus 1 centimeter hem allowance. Take away 3 centimeters, which will be 64 centimeters. This is the length I will work with. How to fold the fabric. For a half circle skirt, you're going to fold the fabric in half perpendicular to the length, like I'm doing. Measure the waist radius of 22 centimeters mark all the way to the end of the fabric. From the dotted line, measure the skirt length of 64 all the way to the end of the fabric, or you can start at the top corner for more easy marking. I find marking this much easier. In my case, I add 64 plus 22, which is equal to 86 centimeters. Start marking from the top, like to the 86 mark, and mark all the way to the edge. The next step is to cut your waistband like I explained while cutting the circle skirt before. If today is your first time watching any of my videos, and you have watched this far, or perhaps you've watched 1 or 2 and are not yet subscribed, all that you need to do is press that subscribe button down below. By doing that, you've joined our family. Also, feel free to share some feedback, by pressing the like button. That is also feedback enough. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.